Sometimes the best promises come from the biggest hurts. Clara Ara Whitmore lived alone in her tiny cabin for 3 years, watching the seasons change without talking to anyone for weeks. Then she found Silas McGrow dying in her barn. They called him Grizzly, a tough mountain man shot up by outlaws and barely alive. Clara Ara was his only chance. For 3 weeks she took care of him with kind hands and quiet prayers. When he finally woke up and spoke, his words hit her hard. "I'll make you a mama before spring," he said, like a man who'd stared death down. It was a promise that would change them both forever. But can two lonely people really find love in the wild mountains? Before we go on, tell us where you're listening from. And if you like this story, hit that subscribe button because I've got something super cool for you tomorrow. 3 years before that big promise, Clara Ara Whitmore came to her mountain cabin with just a wagon, 2 horses, and a heart full of sadness. The little log cabin sat on a rocky ledge, looking out over a huge valley that went on for miles. Tall pine trees stood like old guards, covered in snow most of the year. It was pretty but so lonely, and that's what Clara Ara wanted. Her husband Thomas built the cabin as a hunting spot, hoping to live there one day, but he never got the chance. A fever took him in their 3rd year together, leaving Clara Ara alone in their St. Louis house, with bills she couldn't pay and neighbors who whispered about the young widow who never had kids. The cabin in Colorado was her escape from those whispers, from pitying looks, from empty rooms that still smelled like Thomas's pipe. That first winter almost killed her. Clara Ara didn't know how tough mountain life was. The cold sneaked through every crack in the cabin's logs. Food got low when early snows trapped her for weeks. She learned to chop wood with frozen fingers, melt snow for water when the creek froze, and make beans and pork last through months alone. But in all that struggle, Clara Ara found something surprising. She was stronger than she ever thought. Every challenge she beat made her more sure of herself. She learned to read the sky for weather, track animals in the snow, and store food for winter. The cabin wasn't just a shelter anymore, it was her home. By the 3rd year, her days had a nice rhythm. Mornings started with prayers from her old leather prayer book, the one her mom brought from Ireland years ago. Its pages were soft like fabric from being read so much, with dried flowers and notes from 3 generations of women tucked in the edges. It kept her faith strong when loneliness got heavy. After prayers, she did survival work, checking traps for rabbits or birds, tending her little garden in summer, keeping food stored, and fixing the cabin. Every job needed focus. A mistake could mean life or death in this tough place. Evenings were the hardest. When work was done and night fell like a thick blanket, the silence pushed against the cabin walls. Clara Ara read by candlelight, sometimes talking out loud just to hear a voice. She got used to being alone, but being okay wasn't the same as being happy. Loneliness was like a friend now, as familiar as the wind in the pines. Some nights, Clara Ara wondered if coming here was a big mistake. Other nights, when sunrise painted the mountains gold and pink, she felt lucky to see such beauty. But she didn't know about the man bleeding in her barn. Silas McGrow, called Grizzly, had a big reputation from 30 years in the mountains. That made him seem like a legend. He was 6.5 feet tall, with shoulders like an ox, moving through the wild like a quiet hunter. His dark hair fell past his shoulders with silver streaks that shone in the sun. A thick beard hid half his face, but his sharp gray eyes saw everything. People whispered about his amazing skills. Silas could track a deer in a snowstorm or call elk so well they'd come out to check. He'd survived 3 bear attacks, with scars on his chest and arms telling wild stories. Trappers said he could go weeks without talking, moving through forests like a ghost, leaving almost no trace. The knife at his belt, with a bone handle carved with patterns, came from his dad. It told the story of their family's tie to these mountains. His grandpa was one of the first fur traders here, making friends with native tribes to keep their family safe for years. That knife meant history, family, and tradition passed down. But being a legend came with a cost: loneliness. Silas's reputation followed him to every town and trading post. People saw his size, his weapons, the quiet way he moved, and thought he was dangerous, violent, or wild. Few looked closer to see the man who carved little wooden toys from pine scraps, knew every bird song or only killed what he needed. That loneliness pushed him deeper into the wild each year. Animals like bears and mountain lions were honest. They fought for food or land, not for fun or lies. It was this reputation that brought trouble 3 weeks before Clara Ara found him. The Morrison gang was robbing banks and stagecoaches from Colorado to Montana, led by Jake Morrison, a man who loved hurting people almost as much as stealing. When local sheriffs couldn't stop them, officials asked certain tough guys for help. Silas didn't want to get involved at first. He stayed away from city problems and the violence that came with them. But the officials said the gang wasn't just stealing. They were killing innocent people for fun, including a family with 3 kids under 10. That changed Silas's mind. Kids needed protecting, even if their parents were foolish. He agreed to track the gang and gather info to help catch them. But he found a gang way more organized and dangerous than anyone thought. Morrison had 23 men, each picked for special skills, moving like soldiers, hitting hard, and hiding in secret camps. Silas was spying on their main camp when things went wrong. A guard spotted him, and a chase started. A running gunfight through 3 miles of forest. Silas used every trick he knew to stay ahead, but blood loss and tiredness caught up. He stumbled into Clara Ara's barn, passing out in the hay as his vision faded. Clara Ara's choice to help him came from her faith, not a plan. She found him at dawn while checking her animals, like always. Seeing a huge man, unconscious and bleeding, scared her, but she pushed fear aside. She'd seen too much death already. If she could save him, she would, no matter the risk. Her mom's prayer book told stories of helping strangers and showing mercy without expecting anything back. That's what faith meant, making kind choices every day, not just praying on Sundays. For 3 weeks, Clara Ara used her emergency supplies to care for him. She cleaned his wounds, stitched torn skin, and fed him broth when he was too weak. She prayed over him, reading Bible verses during long nights when his breathing was so faint she worried he'd die. Slowly he got better. His face got color, his breathing steadied, and his wounds started healing. On the morning he woke and said that shocking promise, Clara Ara realized she'd been holding her breath for weeks, waiting for him to live. "I'll make you a mama before spring." Those words hit her like a punch, making her cheeks hot and her heart race. No man had ever talked to her like that, so bold and sure, ignoring all politeness. But his gray eyes held her still, unable to run or argue like she should have. There was no teasing or sneaky plan in his look, just honest determination from a man who never gave up. A storm came out of nowhere, like mountain weather often does. Clara Ara was checking her traps when big snowflakes started falling and wind bent the pines sideways. She barely got back to the cabin before the blizzard hit, turning everything outside into a white blur. Storms like that could last days, so Clara Ara used the time for indoor chores. She was fixing a torn quilt when she heard a noise, a loud thud from the barn, maybe a groan or just the wind. Storms could trick your ears, making trees sound like voices or snow like footsteps. But something about the sound made her stop sewing. She'd lived alone long enough to trust her gut, and her gut said this wasn't normal. She put on her heavy coat, wrapped a shawl around her head, and went out into the storm. The wind stung her face like tiny needles. The barn door, which she always locked tight, was open a bit. Her heart beat faster. Nothing should have moved that door in this wind. She pushed inside, glad for shelter, but knew something was off. Her horses, usually calm, were nervous, eyes rolling. Her cow made a worried sound. Animals sensed danger. Then she saw him, a huge man lying still in the hay, so big he seemed to fill the stall. Blood soaked his shirt and pooled under him, dark against the straw. His face was pale, lips blue from cold or blood loss. A crumpled, wanted poster peeked out under him, stained with blood. Clara Ara wanted to run. Stories about mountain men made them sound wild, like bears. This one looked like trouble. especially with that poster. Helping a wanted man could bring danger she wasn't ready for, but as she stood there, snow swirling around her, a stronger feeling took over. This was a person dying in her barn, and she was his only hope. Her faith said mercy wasn't optional. It was what being a Christian meant. She knelt beside him, checking if he was breathing. His chest moved faintly, unevenly. His forehead was hot with fever, even in the cold. 3 bullet wounds showed through his torn shirt, one in his shoulder, one below his ribs, and one across his head, matting his hair with blood. The wanted poster had a sketch, and the name Silas McGrow, wanted for murder, $500 reward. Clara Ara stared at it, her practical side fighting her kind heart. $500 was a lot, enough for supplies, safety, maybe even a way back to the city. But looking at his pale, pained face, she didn't see a killer. She saw someone's son, someone who'd once been a kid with dreams. Whatever he'd done, right now he was just a man who'd die without her help. She made up her mind. Clara Ara gathered supplies. Clean. Cloth for bandages, whiskey to clean wounds, needle and thread for stitching, blankets to keep him warm. By lamplight, with the storm raging outside, she worked to save a stranger's life. The shoulder wound was the worst. The bullet went through but tore muscle and maybe hit bone. She cut away his shirt, seeing a chest and arms covered in old scars. This man had survived fights before. Knives, claws, burns, and worse told a story of a hard life. She cleaned the wounds carefully, feeling sick as infected blood flowed. The whiskey made him groan, but he didn't wake. She stitched what she could, bandaged the rest, and wrapped him in blankets. That first night she stayed in the barn, checking his breathing, changing bloody bandages, and giving him water when fever made him restless. He mumbled in his sleep, bits of words, maybe names or warnings. Once he shouted, "Sarah, get behind the trees!" in a desperate voice. Clara Ara wondered who Sarah was. A wife, a daughter, someone this tough man loved enough to protect even in dreams. The storm lasted 3 days, giving her time to move him to the cabin when he needed more care. Getting a man his size from the barn to the house was tricky. She made a sled from rope and branches and used her horses to pull it through the snow. Every bump made him groan, but he stayed unconscious. In the cabin, she set up a bed near the fireplace to keep him warm. She'd never treated wounds this bad, but she knew how to care for hurt animals, keep wounds clean, fight infection, keep him warm, and give fluids. The rest was up to God. For 3 weeks, Clara Ara's world was just his bedside. Her days followed his breathing. She read her prayer book to him, hoping the words kept his spirit tied to his body. She changed bandages, fed him broth, and watched his wounds slowly heal. The angry red faded to pale scars. She watched for every small sign of him getting better, surprised at how much it mattered to her. She told herself it was just her duty, but deep down, something more was growing. While caring for him, she studied his face, the strong jaw under his beard, the way his eyebrows moved when he dreamed of pain, the long lashes on his cheeks. He was handsome in a rough, wild way, so different from her gentle Thomas. She wondered, what did it be like when his gray eyes opened, when his deep voice spoke to her, not just mumbled in fever? On the morning he woke, Clara Ara was reading from the Bible about Ruth, a widow who chose loyalty over safety. She felt him watching her, his breathing different, his stillness changed. When she looked up, his gray eyes locked on hers, sharp and intense. They stared at each other quietly. Clara Ara saw smarts in his gaze and something else, like he was studying her, memorizing her. It should have scared her, but instead she felt safe, like she'd passed a test she didn't know she was taking. When he spoke, his voice was rough, but sure. "I'll make you a mama before spring." The words felt heavy in the air. Clara Ara's face got hot, her heart pounding. There was no right way to answer something so bold. It was crazy, rude, not okay from a stranger she'd saved. But his eyes held her still. No teasing, no sneaky plan, just honest intention from a man who never backed down. Her face burned as Silas's words echoed in the cabin. She stood quickly, almost dropping her prayer book, and started doing little chores. stoking the fire, moving things on her shelf, anything to avoid his eyes. The silence was heavy with questions and wild promises. "You need broth," she said, her voice too high. "You've been sick for days." Silas watched her move around with those sharp gray eyes, like a wolf watching a deer. But when he spoke again, his voice was softer, almost sorry. "Didn't mean to shock you, ma'am. Sometimes a man says what's in his heart without thinking it through." Clara paused, surprised he tried to make it better. She'd expected him to push or act proud, not this gentle step back. When she looked at him, she saw tiredness in his face, not just from his wounds, but from something deeper. "I'm Clara Whitmore," she said softly, giving him her name to ease the awkward moment. "Silas McGraw." He tried to move and winced, touching the bandages on his ribs. "Though I bet you already know that." Clara glanced at the wanted poster she'd hidden under papers on her table. Silas saw her look and nodded. "Found that, did you? Wondered if you would." He was quiet, then added, "Probably wondering if you're safe with a wanted man in your house?" The question was real and needed. Clara had thought about it during long nights nursing him, especially when his fever dreams were wild. But, seeing him now, weak as a baby, barely sitting up, she felt more curious than scared. "The poster says murder," she said carefully. Silas met her eyes. "Says a lot of things. Question is, do you believe everything you read, or do you judge a man by what you see?" Clara thought about this as she got broth from the pot over the fire. She'd seen him helpless, calling out to protect someone named Sarah in his sleep. She'd seen him try to apologize for his bold words. Those weren't the acts of a cold killer. "I see a man who got shot 3 times and fought to live," she said, handing him the broth. "And I see someone dumb enough to make promises he's got no right to make." Silas took the cup, his big hands making it look tiny. "But I meant what I said, Clara Whitmore. Don't know why yet, but I meant it." Her full name in his voice sent a shiver through her. Thomas called her Clara Bird, light and sweet. Silas said her name like it was something precious, every part important. Over the next few days, they fell into a careful routine. Clara brought him food and checked his bandages, keeping things proper like a nurse. Silas took her help quietly, never asking for more than she gave, but his eyes followed her, clearly interested. He was a good patient, careful in her small cabin, knowing his presence changed her orderly life. When she helped him to the outhouse, he said sorry for the trouble. When she changed his bandages, he warned her if the pain might make him jump or curse. "You don't have to be so careful," Clara told him on the 4th day after he woke, as he looked at a wooden spoon she'd carved. "This is the frontier, not a fancy city parlor." Silas looked up from the spoon. "Maybe, but you deserve better than rough manners from a guy who owes you his life." His honesty surprised her. She'd expected wild mountain ways, not this gentle respect. She started staying longer when they talked, pulled into chats that showed he was deeper than she thought. "Where'd you learn to carve?" he asked, holding the spoon gently in his big hands. "Had to," Clara said. "I came here with city stuff that broke fast. Learned to make what I needed. Good work, clean lines, nice balance," he said, setting the spoon down carefully. "My dad taught me the same stuff. Said a man who can't make his own tools is always stuck relying on others." "Your dad was a mountain man, too? Trapper, trader, sometimes scout for wagon trains. Lived his whole life in these mountains." Silas's face got far away. "Died when I was 17. Bear attack gone wrong." Clara saw pain in his eyes, not from his wounds. "I'm sorry. That must have been awful." "It was. But he taught me everything. How to read weather, track animals, survive winters that kill most folks." Silas looked at her. "How to spot something worth protecting when you find it." His words meant more than they seemed. Clara felt her cheeks get warm, but this time she didn't look away. Something was growing between them, delicate but real. That night, Clara lay in her small bed. She'd given Silas the bigger one by the fire, and listened to his steady breathing. For 3 years, she'd been the only sound in the cabin. Now another heartbeat joined hers, another person in her safe space. The wooden box by her bed felt heavier in the dark. Inside was her wedding ring, taken off after Thomas died. She told herself it was practical. Working hands didn't need jewelry, but really, it was about a past she loved but lost, dreams that died with Thomas. Could she trust her heart to another man? Especially one with a mysterious past and an uncertain future? Silas's promise echoed in her mind. I'll make you a mama before spring. It was crazy, impossible, bold, but something in her felt drawn to his sureness, his lack of doubt. When had anyone been so certain about her, so ready to bet everything? On her worth? In the dark, Clara Ara touched her flat stomach, wondering what it'd feel like to have a baby there. She'd tried for 3 years with Thomas, praying and seeing doctors who just said to wait. That failure added to her grief when he died. But what if it wasn't her fault? What if this wild man could give her what her kind husband couldn't? The thought was shocking, against everything she'd learned about marriage and manners. But it stuck with her as she listened to Silas breathe. By his second week of healing, Silas got antsy lying in bed. Clara Ara found him trying to chop kindling one morning, moving slowly but eager to help. "You'll rip your stitches," she said, taking the axe. "Can't stay in bed like a sick kid while you do everything," Silas said. "Besides, I heal better when I'm moving." Clara Ara saw the neat stack of wood he'd already cut, every piece the same size, split clean despite his weakness. His skill was clear. "At least let me check your bandages first," she said, leading him inside. Morning light showed how much stronger he was. His face had color, and his movements were smoother. When she checked the wound on his ribs, it was healing well. No infection. "You've got gentle hands," Silas said as she worked. "Strong when they need to be, but gentle." Clara Ara tried to ignore how his voice made her heart beat faster. "Had to learn. Living alone means being your own doctor." "More than that," Silas said, watching her face as she bandaged him. "You've got something in you that wants to fix things. Probably can't help it." He was right, and it hit close. Clara Ara always helped hurt things. Birds with broken wings, sad people, anything in pain. Thomas used to joke about her taking in strays. "Maybe that's why God led me to find you," she said without thinking, then blushed. "You think God had a hand in this?" Silas asked, not teasing, but curious. "I think God works through people doing kind things," Clara Ara said, tying the bandage. "Nothing special about helping someone who needs it. Lots of folks would have left me to die or turned me in for that reward money," Silas said. Clara Ara had thought about the $500 many times. It could fix so many problems, give her safety she couldn't get alone. But every time she pictured turning him in, something in her said no to betraying him. "Blood money doesn't make anyone happy," she said firmly. Silas caught her hand as she reached for extra bandages, his big fingers gentle around hers. "Most folks would say $500 could change your life. I like my life how it is," Clara Ara said, her voice shaky from his touch, and the truth she just realized. Somewhere in these weeks, her lonely cabin felt like a home again. "Do you?" Silas's thumb brushed her knuckles softly. "Or do you tell yourself that because wanting more feels too scary?" His question hit hard. Clara Ara pulled her hand free and started putting away supplies. "I should make breakfast." But Silas wasn't done. "I've been watching you." "Clara Ara, you move like you're trying not to take up space. Like you're sorry for being alive." "That's not true," she said, but his words rang true. She'd been making herself smaller, quieter, less important each year alone. Then, "Why no pictures on your walls? No flowers on your table, no music at night. All the things that make a house feel lived in, not just survived in." Clara Ara turned to face him, surprised he noticed so much. "How do you know what I had before?" "Because I see what's missing now," Silas said, standing and moving to the mantel where only basic things sat. "No photos, no decorations, nothing personal except what you absolutely need. You're living like you're scared to get comfortable." His words hurt, because they were true. Clara Ara had cut her life down to just what she needed, telling herself it was practical. But really, she was guarding herself from hope, from the pain of losing things she cared about. "Maybe I learned not to hold on to things that can be taken away," she said softly. Silas looked at her, understanding in his gray eyes. "Someone hurt you bad." "Life hurt me," Clara said, moving to the stove to start cooking. I'm not the first woman to lose a husband. Won't be the last. But you decided it's safer to stop living than risk loving again, Silas said gently but firmly. His words stopped her hands on the coffee pot. She thought she was being smart, strong, independent, but Silas saw the fear hiding underneath. I'm living, she said, defensive. You're surviving. There's a difference. Over the next few days, Silas started changing her neat little world. He carved a small wooden flower from pine scraps and left it on her table. He fixed the squeaky door hinge she'd ignored. Most of all, he started cooking meals. Simple but tasty food that made her sit and enjoy, not just eat to stay alive. Where'd you learn to cook? Clara asked, watching him turn deer meat and wild onions into something amazing. 30 years of feeding myself, Silas said, adding spices like he'd done it forever. Gets old eating burnt meat and plain beans. The meal was a treat. Clara had forgotten food could be fun, not just fuel. She savored every bite, enjoying the rich flavors. This is so good, she said, meaning it. Good foods. One of life's best things, Silas said. Shame to waste it on anything less than your best. After dinner, he surprised her with a carved wooden spoon from his pocket. It was beautiful, smooth as silk, perfectly shaped, with tiny patterns that glowed in the firelight. For you, he said, setting it by her plate. Clara picked it up, amazed at how well it was made. When did you make this? Evenings while you were reading, Silas said, watching her look at it. Hands need something to do while healing. The spoon showed hours of careful work, a gift made, with real care. Clara realized this was his way of giving her something pretty just because she deserved it. It's too nice for everyday use, she said. No such thing, Silas said firmly. You deserve nice things every day, not just for special times. That night, Clara held the spoon in bed, feeling its smooth warmth. No one had made something just for her since Thomas carved her a jewelry box when they were courting. She'd forgotten what it felt like to matter to someone like that. The spoon wasn't just a tool, it was a sign that her comfort mattered, that her life deserved more than just getting by. For the first time in 3 years, Clara fell asleep smiling. 3 weeks into Silas's healing, spring started showing up. Ice on the windows got smaller each morning, and Clara heard water running under frozen creeks. The mountains were saying winter was almost over, but spring also meant their safe little world couldn't last. Clara noticed Silas acting different before she fully understood why. He stood at her windows, staring outside like he was reading something dangerous. His hand kept reaching for weapons he didn't have, stored in her cellar. You're worried about something, she said one morning, catching him at the east window. Silas didn't lie. Winter kept us safe. Spring makes travel easier. Travel for who? People who might still be looking for me, he said, turning to her, his face serious. That gang doesn't give up easy. They've probably been waiting for the snow to melt. Clara's stomach tightened. She'd gotten so cozy with their routine that she almost forgot why he was here. How long do we have? Hard to say. Could be weeks. Could be days. Depends how much they want that reward money. Silas's dad's old compass seemed heavier as he talked. It had guided him through countless trips, always pointing to purpose, even when the path was tough. Now it pointed to a choice that would shape their future. I should leave, he said quietly. Every day I stay puts you in more danger. And leaving too soon could get you killed, Clara said, stronger than she meant. Your wounds aren't fully healed. You're still weak. Weak enough to get you killed if they find me here, Silas said, his jaw set like he'd made up his mind. Better I take my chances out there than bring trouble to your door. Clara turned to the fire, hiding her feelings. She'd started thinking of Silas as a permanent part of her life, not just a patient, but a partner. Realizing how much she cared about him hit her hard. She'd been foolish, a widow falling for a wanted man and dreaming of a future together. Maybe you're right, she said, keeping her voice steady. Maybe it's better if you go. But Silas heard something in her tone and crossed the room to stand behind her. Clara. She didn't turn, couldn't face him with her emotions so raw. I've got preserves to check, bread to bake. A normal life to get back to? Look at me, he said, his voice calm but firm. Clara Ara turned slowly, trying to hide her feelings, but Silas saw right through her. You don't want me to go? It wasn't a question, and she couldn't lie. What I want doesn't matter. What's practical, safe, proper, that's what counts. Does it? Silas stepped closer, close enough she could smell pine and leather, now comforting. Or are you just scared to admit you care what happens to me? Of course I care, she blurted out. I've spent 3 weeks keeping you alive, using my supplies, risking my safety and name. Of course I care. That's not what I mean, and you know it. Clara Ara's cheeks burned. They were stepping into feelings she wasn't ready for, ones she'd kept locked away. I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to say what's true, Silas said, his gray eyes intense. Not what's proper or safe, but what's real. Clara Ara had spent 3 years hiding, from truth to avoid pain, but Silas made pretending impossible. The truth is, I'm terrified, she whispered. Scared of caring about someone again, losing someone again, wanting things I can't have. What things? You know what things, she said, barely audible. The things you promised that first day. Family, a future, something. More than just surviving. Silas cupped her face in his big hands, his thumbs soft on her cheeks. Those aren't things you can't have, Clara Ara. They're things you're scared to grab. And what if I grab them and lose everything again? What if you don't grab them and lose everything anyway? His voice was gentle but firm. You're already living like you've lost what matters. At least wanting something gives you a shot at getting it. Before she could answer, Silas kissed her. It wasn't like Thomas's soft, polite kisses. This was raw, honest want from a man who didn't hide his feelings. Clara Ara wanted to pull away, to stay safe, but her body, lonely for 3 years, craved his touch. She kissed him back, desperate, shocking herself. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Clara Ara felt dizzy from the feeling. This is crazy, she said. Maybe, Silas said, but it's honest crazy. Better than pretending you don't feel what you feel. That night, they sat closer by the fire, the air different now that they'd admitted their feelings. Clara Ara noticed everything about Silas. His broad shoulders, strong hands carving wood, the way firelight caught his dark hair. Tell me about Sarah, she said softly. Silas stopped carving. What about her? You called her name in your fever, told her to hide behind trees. She's important to you. Silas was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice held old pain. Sarah was my wife, died in a Cheyenne raid 5 years ago. Clara Ara felt a twist in her chest. Part sadness, part jealousy she had no right to feel. I'm sorry. That must have been awful. It was. Silas started carving again. Lost our unborn son with her too, the healer said. His words explained so much. His promise to make her a mother, his need for family, the deep loneliness she'd sensed. Is that why you promised me that? Because of what you lost? Silas looked at her. I promised because of what I found. You saved my life, Clara Ara. More than that, you reminded me why life's worth living. That night, Clara Ara thought about courage. Courage to want happiness despite the risk, to open her heart knowing pain might come. Everyone she'd loved had been taken, but maybe that's why love mattered when it came back. In the dark, she made a choice that would change everything. Deciding to love Silas was easier to think about than to do. For 3 days after their kiss, Clara Ara watched him, aware of him in a new way, but struggled to find words for her big feelings. Silas seemed to understand, giving her space but showing his feelings with soft touches and meaningful looks. The moment came one morning when soft snow fell outside, making the cabin feel like its own little world. Clara Ara was fixing one of Thomas's old shirts, unable to throw it away, when Silas looked up from cleaning his knife. You're thinking about him, he said quietly. Clara Ara's hands stopped. Yes. Want to tell me about him? His question surprised her. Thomas was a topic she avoided, too painful to share, but Silas sounded truly interested, not just polite. He was gentle, she started slowly, kind in ways that made life easier. He never yelled, Never made me feel silly for being scared of storms or missing my family. Silas nodded, listening. We tried for 3 years to have kids. Saw doctors in St. Louis. Tried every cure people suggested. Nothing worked. Her voice got softer. When he died, I wondered if God was punishing me for some sin I didn't know about. Why else couldn't I have the kids I wanted so bad? Maybe because you were meant to have different kids with a different man, Silas said softly. Clara Ara looked up, surprised by his sureness. You sound so sure? I am sure. Silas put down his knife and sat beside her on the bench. Sometimes life takes things away to give you what you're really meant to have. His closeness made her heart race, but she tried to focus. That seems mean. Maybe, or maybe, it's just how growing works. Old things have to go before new ones can come. Silas pointed to the window where snow melted off pine branches in the warmer air. Trees drop old needles for new ones. Fields rest before growing the best crops. Clara Ara thought about this, touching Thomas's shirt. You think my marriage was just practice for something else? I think you learned how to love in that marriage. Now you're ready to love bigger, better. Silas's hand covered hers on the shirt. Question is, do you trust yourself to try? His touch warmed her arm. Clara Ara had fought her feelings for weeks, telling herself it was just gratitude or loneliness. But in this quiet snow, she couldn't lie anymore. I want to try, she whispered, but I don't know how to be with someone like you. Wild, complicated, making promises that sound impossible but feel so sure. Silas smiled, his serious face lighting up. Clara Ara, you've lived alone in the mountains for 3 years, saved a stranger's life, faced challenges that would break most folks. You're way tougher than you think. His words made her laugh, a sound she hadn't heard from herself in ages. I guess surviving here takes some guts. More than guts. It takes someone who fights for what matters. Silas's thumb brushed her hand. I've watched you fight for my life these weeks. Makes me wonder what you could do if you fought for your own happiness. Clara Ara felt something loosen in her chest, like a knot untying. She thought of her mom's locket in her drawer, with a dried flower from her childhood home. That flower survived a long journey, just like her. Maybe it was time to stop just surviving and start living. There's something I need to tell you, she said, her voice steady. About Thomas and me. We never had kids. Silas waited, sensing it was important. The doctors said it was my fault. Something about my body that makes babies unlikely. Her cheeks got hot, but she kept going. I need you to know that before you make more promises about making me a mama. Silas's face softened, not disappointed. Did the doctors check your husband too? No. Back then they always blamed the woman. Silas shook his head. Doctors don't know everything, Clara Ara, especially about women's bodies. But what if they're right? What if I can't have kids? Silas lifted her chin to meet his eyes. Then we'll love whatever kids God sends us. Orphans, kids from tough homes, maybe my own daughter if I can find her. Your daughter? Clara Ara's heart stopped. You have a daughter? Silas's face went blank, like he'd said something he didn't mean to. Had, he said quietly. Lost track of her after Sarah died. Her grandma took her east, wouldn't tell me where. Clara Ara's world tilted. A daughter. Silas had a child out there, a piece of his heart belonging to someone else. Everything felt more complicated now. How old is she? She asked. 12 now, I reckon, Silas said, his voice full of pain. Haven't seen her since the funeral. Her grandma blamed me for Sarah's death, said I was too dangerous to raise a kid. Was she right? Clara Ara asked, sharper than she meant. She needed to know. If he was too dangerous for his daughter, what did that mean for her? Maybe, Silas said, honest in a way that hurt. My life's been rough, wild, but I loved that girl more than anything. Would have done anything to keep her safe. Clara Ara saw the truth in his face. The raw pain of a dad kept from his child. Her jealousy turned into something deeper. This wasn't about competing for his love. It was about a wound that never healed, a love that needed understanding. What's her name? She asked softly. Emma Rose McGraw? Silas's voice softened. She had Sarah's dark eyes but my stubborn chin. Could outstubborn a mule when she wanted. Clara Ara pictured a dark-eyed girl with Silas's strong jaw and felt a sudden urge to protect a child she'd never met. "Maybe someday we can find her," she said quietly. Silas looked at her, surprised, maybe hopeful. "We? If you want that, if you want me to help find her," Clara Ara said, taking a deep breath, choosing a future she couldn't fully see. "I meant what I said about trusting you. That includes trusting your love for your daughter." Silas looked at her like she'd given him a treasure. Then he kissed her again, gentle this time, full of gratitude and want. That night, when Clara Ara invited Silas to her bed, she knew the road ahead was tricky. He loved her, but also a daughter he'd lost. She wanted kids, but might not have them. They both carried scars that might never heal. But as Silas held her in the dark, his hands gentle on her, Clara Ara learned love didn't need to be perfect. It just needed the courage to try for happiness, to build something good on hope and trust. When morning came, they'd face whatever came. For now, in the quiet dark of her cabin, Clara Ara believed in the chance for family, a future, and love that could survive the wild mountains. 2 weeks after they became lovers, Clara Ara found a letter while washing Silas's clothes. His clothes were torn and bloody when she found him, patched quickly with whatever she had. Now that he was better, she wanted to fix them properly. She was checking his coat pockets when her fingers found a folded paper, old and soft from being carried so long. She wanted to leave it alone. Everyone deserves private letters. But a blood stain on the corner caught her eye, the same blood from when he was dying. This letter mattered enough for him to keep it close during a deadly fight. She told herself to put it away, but it felt like a key to understanding this man she loved. Before she could stop, she unfolded it and read. The handwriting was neat, like a woman who learned proper writing. It was dated 3 months ago. "Mr. McGraw," it started, all formal. "I'm writing about your daughter, Emma Rose McGraw, who's with me. As you know, I've kept you from her since her mother's death, believing your life is too dangerous for raising a child." Clara Ara's hands shook. Silas had a daughter, and someone was keeping her from him on purpose. The letter went on, cold and proper. "But Emma's acting out, talking about finding you, trying to run away twice this month, and not listening to me. She's got your stubborn streak and other bad traits, so I'm willing to rethink things. If you can show you've settled down and have a proper home. If you can prove you're not dangerous anymore, I might allow supervised visits." It was signed Mrs. Catherine Donovan with a Denver address. At the bottom, in a child's careful writing, was, "Papa, I miss you. Please come find me. Love, Emma." Clara Ara stared at the child's words until her eyes blurred. The letter was 3 months old. Silas had carried this chance to see his daughter for 3 months and never told her. She heard his steps on the porch and folded the letter fast, but not fast enough. Silas saw her face and knew. "You read it," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to," Clara Ara said, her voice empty. "It fell out of your coat. I saw the blood and thought you had a right to know what I'm hiding," Silas said, not angry, just tired, which felt worse. "Don't I?" she asked before she could stop. "We've shared a bed, Silas. You've promised me a future. Did you think I'd never find out about your daughter?" Silas sat by the fire, looking older than he was. "Didn't know how to tell you." "Tell me what? That you've been lying for weeks?" "Didn't lie, just didn't know how to explain. Something I haven't figured out myself." He looked at her, eyes full of pain. "That letter came the day before I tracked the Morrison gang. Been carrying it since, trying to decide what to do." Clara Ara's anger cooled, turning to confusion. "What's to decide? She's your daughter. She wants you. She wants the dad she remembers, not the man I am now," Silas said, his voice rough. "When Sarah died, I lost it. Spent 5 years hunting down every Cheyenne in that raid, making them pay. By the end, I wasn't fit for a kid or anyone." His words showed Clara Ara the truth of what she'd found. "The wanted poster," she said. "That's what the murder charge is about. Killing men who'd already been judged by their tribe, but not by city law." Silas gave a bitter laugh. "Revenge doesn't care about laws." Clara Ara sat down, her legs shaky. Everything she thought she knew had changed. So when you promised to make me a mama, you meant it, Silas said, leaning forward, eyes intense. But I knew I might not live long enough to keep it. Thought you deserved whatever happiness I could give, even if it's short. And, Emma, what about your promise to her? What promise? Silas's voice broke. I haven't seen her in 5 years. Haven't been allowed to write, visit, nothing. For all I know, she's better off without me. Clara Ara looked at the letter, reading Emma's words again. She doesn't think so. She's 12. What does she know about what's good for her? She knows she misses her dad, Clara Ara said sharply. She knows she's been kept from the person who should love her most. Silas flinched like she'd hit him. You think I don't know that? You think I don't dream about her? Wonder what she looks like, if she's happy? If she even remembers me? Then why haven't you gone to Denver? Why are you here? With me? The question sat heavy between them. Silas stared into the fire like it might give answers. Because I'm scared, he admitted. Scared she'll see what I've become and wish I'd stayed away. Scared her grandma's right about me being too dangerous. Scared I'll let her down like I let her mom down. Clara Ara's anger faded into something deeper. This was the real Silas, afraid of failing the person he loved most. How did you let Sarah down? Couldn't keep her safe, he said, voice raw. Made too many enemies, lived too close to danger. When the raid came, it was because of me, my actions. Sarah died because she was my wife. Clara Ara saw the heavy guilt he carried, not just grief, but blame, for 5 years. That's why you haven't contacted Emma. You think you'll get her hurt, too. Men like me don't get families, Clara Ara. We're too dangerous, marked by violence. Emma's better off in Denver, learning to be a lady than running wild with a wanted man. And me? Clara Ara asked, voice steady. Am I better? Off without you? Silas's eyes held so much pain it hurt her heart. You're different. You're strong enough to choose, old enough to know the risks. Emma's just a kid. Emma's a kid who needs her dad. Clara Ara folded the letter and held it out. Maybe the question isn't if you're good enough for her. Maybe it's if you love her enough to try. Silas stared at the letter but didn't take it. What if I fail her again? What if you don't try and regret it forever? Clara Ara kept the letter out, like a gift. I can't decide for you, Silas, but love without risk isn't love. It's just fear pretending to be love. They sat quietly, the fire crackling, heavy with tough choices. Finally, Silas took the letter. If I go to Denver, he said softly, I want you to come with me. Clara Ara's heart stopped. What? If I'm going to be the dad Emma deserves, I want to do it with someone who knows what family means. His eyes met hers. That promise about making you a mama, maybe it includes Emma too. The idea was beautiful and scary. Clara Ara thought of the 12-year-old girl she'd never met, missing her dad. She thought of Silas, stuck by fear of failing. She thought of herself, scared to want the family she always dreamed of. We'd be taking a huge risk, she said. Yeah, we might lose everything, Silas said, his voice sure like his first promise. Or we might gain everything. Question is, do you trust me enough to find out? Clara Ara looked at the man who'd stumbled bleeding into her barn and changed her world. In 6 weeks, he'd taught her to live, not just survive, to want happiness, not just safety. Now he was asking her to trust him with the biggest risk, a family that included his lost daughter. When do we leave for Denver? She asked. Deciding to go to Denver turned their quiet cabin into a planning hub for a risky future. Over the next week, Clara Ara and Silas got ready for a trip that would test their bond. Silas showed her a handmade doll from his things, a reminder of the daughter he hoped to find. It wasn't fancy, made from fabric scraps and corn husks, but it was full of love. Emma had sewn button eyes and a tiny embroidered mouth, making a face both sweet and strong. The doll's dress was blue with little yellow flowers. She made this for her mom, Silas said, holding it carefully. Sarah was pregnant when she died. Emma wanted her baby sister to have a toy. Clara Ara's eyes teared up looking at the doll. She was going to be a great big sister. She was good at everything, Silas said, his voice heavy with 5 years of sadness. Smart, stubborn like me, but gentle with anything smaller. Used to follow me around, learning to track and find plants. could spot deer tracks before most grown-ups. You taught her to live in the wild, Clara Ara said. Taught her to respect it. The wild isn't something you just survive. It's something you learn to live with. Emma got that better than most. Silas put the doll on the mantel, where it watched over their plans. Her grandma thinks that's no good for a young lady. Clara Ara heard his frustration. Mrs. Donovan wants Emma to be something she's not. Quiet, proper, caring about dresses and manners, not skills. Silas looked out the window, restless. Nothing wrong with manners, but they won't keep you alive if trouble comes. And trouble might come, Clara Ara said. They both knew going to Denver meant facing dangers they'd avoided in the mountains. The Morrison gang might still be out there. The law might want Silas. Mrs. Donovan might not let them see Emma. Probably will, Silas said. Question is, are we ready when it does? Their planning was like preparing for a battle. Silas cleaned his weapons, checking them carefully. Clara counted their supplies, figuring out what they'd need and could carry. They studied maps at night, picking routes to stay safe but still move fast. But the real challenge wasn't maps or supplies. It was the worries that kept Clara Ara up at night. What if she doesn't like me? She asked one night, saying her fear out loud. Silas turned to her in bed. Why wouldn't she? I'm a stranger. I'm taking her dad's attention. I'm proof he's moved on from her mom. Clara Ara stared at the ceiling, shadows dancing from the fire. I'm everything that changes her life, which has already been turned upside down. Or you're everything that brings stability to a life that's had too little, Silas said, taking her hand under the blankets. Emma's been told for 5 years her dad's dangerous, no good for proper folks. Then you show up, a woman who loved him anyway, who saw something worth saving. That might be what she needs. What if Mrs. Donovan won't let us see her? Then we'll find another way, Silas said, his voice firm. I'm done letting others decide what's best for my daughter. Clara Ara squeezed his hand, feeling stronger. What if the law comes for you before we can get Emma? Then you take Emma and hide till it's safe, Silas said, like it was simple. I won't leave you, Clara Ara said. You will, if it means keeping Emma safe, Silas said, gripping her hand. That's not up for debate, Clara Ara. Emma comes first. His words showed how much he loved his daughter, but also how shaky their plan was. They were basically planning to take a child from her legal guardian, with only their love and Silas's fatherly rights, which the law might not care about. We could write to Mrs. Donovan first, Clara Ara said. Say you've settled down, got a proper home. Maybe she'd talk without a fight. Silas thought about it. Might work, or might give her time to hide Emma before we get there. Would she do that? A woman who'd keep a kid from her dad for 5 years would do whatever she thinks is right to keep control, Silas said, bitter. Clara Ara tried to see it from Mrs. Donovan's side, a grandma thinking she's protecting her granddaughter from a dangerous man. But good intentions didn't erase the pain she'd caused Silas and Emma. Maybe we can show her she's wrong, Clara Ara said. Prove you've changed, that you can give Emma a steady home. Maybe, Silas said, but we need to be ready if talking doesn't work. The thought made Clara Ara's stomach twist. Their last week of planning got urgent. Spring was coming fast, and with it, the chance the Morrison gang would start looking for Silas again. Every day they waited was another day of danger. Clara Ara memorized every detail of their cabin life, like saving memories. The way sunlight hit their breakfast table, Silas's quiet humming as he worked, the warmth of their bed when he held her close before dawn. She couldn't shake the feeling they were leaving something special behind, something they might not get back. Having second thoughts? Silas asked, finding her standing in the doorway on their last morning. Third and fourth thoughts, Clara Ara admitted, but not changing my mind. Good, because I need you for this, Silas said, standing beside her, both looking at the valley that held their love. Emma's gonna need someone who knows how to start over, to build something new from broken bits. Is that what we're doing? Building something new? We're building a family, Silas said, his arm around her waist, strong and sure. Might not look like other families, might not follow normal rules, but it'll be ours. Clara Ara leaned into him, finding courage in his sureness. What if we're making a huge mistake? Then we'll make it together and fix it together, Silas said, turning her to face him, his gray eyes serious. I've spent 5 years scared to risk anything important. You've spent 3 years scared to want anything that might hurt. Maybe it's time we both stop being afraid. That afternoon, they packed their wagon and started toward Denver. The cabin faded behind them as they moved into valleys leading to the city, to a fight, and to a 12-year-old girl who'd waited 5 years for her dad. Clara kept thinking of Emma's doll, with its button eyes and strong little face, made by a girl who stitched love into every part, creating something beautiful from scraps and hope. A girl who got her dad's stubbornness and her mom's gentle heart. A girl who might complete the family Clara never dared dream of. The doll rode with them, a sign of hope and what they could gain or lose. Each mile to Denver brought them closer to a moment that would decide if love could beat the law, if stubbornness could win over doubt, and if 3 hurt people could make something whole together. The mountains stayed quiet behind them. The city waited ahead with all its chances and dangers. Clara and Silas moved toward a future that would test everything they'd learned about love, family, and the bravery it took to fight for both. 3 days from Denver, the Morrison gang found them. Clara was driving the wagon while Silas scouted ahead, a habit they kept since leaving the mountains. The trail went through a narrow valley, the kind Silas said to watch for ambushes. She heard a gunshot before she saw anything, a sharp crack bouncing off the valley walls. The horses panicked, nearly tipping the wagon, but Clara got them under control. Her heart raced as she looked for Silas, spotting him behind a boulder 50 yards ahead, his dad's rifle ready. "Clara!" he shouted. "Get the wagon! Into those trees and stay low!" She didn't wait, steering the horses toward pines that offered cover. As she calmed the animals, she saw the attackers. 5 men on horseback, spread out to block escape. The leader sat confident, like he enjoyed scaring people. Even far away, Clara saw his cruel face, holding his rifle like part of him. This was Jake Morrison, the gang leader who'd terrorized the territory. "Silas McGraw!" Morrison yelled. "You've led us on a wild chase, but it ends here." "Depends what you mean by end," Silas called back, eyes on the riders. Morrison laughed, sounding excited. "Ends with you dead, mountain man. Question is, does your lady die quick or slow?" Clara's stomach froze. She'd known this could happen, but facing real killers was scarier than imagining it. Her hands shook as she grabbed the shotgun Silas made her carry, checking both barrels. "You've got 30 seconds to ride off," Silas shouted. "After that, I shoot back." "You're outnumbered 5-1, McGraw," Morrison said. "Even you ain't that good. Wanna bet?" Clara saw Silas's shoulders tense, his body still, planning every move. This was the man from the stories, not the kind lover who carved spoons, but a deadly hunter who'd survived 30 years by being faster and smarter. It was scary and amazing. Every bit of softness was gone, replaced by a sharp focus that made the air feel dangerous. When Silas moved, it was smooth and exact. His first shot knocked Morrison's hat off, close enough to graze his hair. The second broke a rifle stock before the man could aim. The third and fourth shots came so fast they sounded like one, dropping 2 horses and sending riders scrambling. Clara had never seen anything like it. Silas worked his rifle like a machine, every shot perfect, every move planned to keep the upper hand. This wasn't random shooting, it was careful, like an artist. Morrison's men shot back, but they were aiming uphill at a moving target. Their bullets hit rocks and trees, but Silas seemed to know where they'd shoot, always one step ahead. "Damn you, McGraw!" Morrison yelled. "Fight like a man!" "I am," Silas shouted. "You're the ones fighting like beginners." Clara watched, scared and amazed as Silas took apart their attackers. A shot broke another rifle, another grazed a shoulder, sending a man running. Each shot was meant to scare, not just kill, but the gang was tough too, and started to figure out Silas's moves. 2 riders split off, circling to attack from the sides. Clara realized Silas couldn't watch everywhere. Without thinking, she stood from behind the wagon, shotgun ready. When the side riders got close, she fired both barrels. The loud blasts echoed like thunder. The buckshot didn't kill them, but it didn't need to. One horse fell, trapping its rider, and the other threw its rider into thorny bushes, leaving him hurt. "Good shot," Silas called, proud. But their win didn't last. Morrison and his men were regrouping, and Clara saw cold planning in his eyes. This wasn't over. It was just starting. Morrison's face was red with anger, seeing his men outfought by one man and a woman with a shotgun. He shouted orders, his voice sharp like a leader who hated losing. "Forget fancy shooting," he growled. "Rush them. They can't reload fast enough to stop us all." Clara felt cold fear. 3 men were ready to charge from different sides, too many to stop. She had 2 shotgun shells and maybe time to reload once. Silas was a great shot, but even he couldn't stop 3 charging riders. "Clara!" Silas's voice cut through her panic. "When they charge, shoot the one in the middle. I'll get the ones on the sides." "What if I miss?" "You won't," Silas said. "You're fighting for Emma now, for our family." His words steadied her. She thought of Emma in Denver, waiting 5 years for her dad, and the doll she made with love. Morrison raised his hand, and Clara knew the charge was coming. She gripped her shotgun, slowing her breathing despite her racing heart. Silas had taught her to shoot, and she was good, but shooting targets wasn't like shooting men trying to kill her. "Now!" Morrison yelled, charging forward. The 3 riders came like a storm, horses pounding, dust flying. Clara had 10 seconds before they'd be close enough for pistols to hit hard. She aimed at Morrison, charging straight at her with 2 pistols. If she stopped him, the others might give up. If she missed, he'd ride over her and end it. She waited until she saw the hate in his eyes, then fired both barrels. The shotgun's kick pushed her back, but she saw Morrison's horse stumble and fall, throwing him hard to the ground. Silas's rifle fired twice, fast, and both side riders fell from their horses. Clara couldn't tell if they were dead or hurt. The valley went quiet, except for the groans of hurt men and horses. Clara grabbed more shells, her hands shaking. Morrison was alive, crawling to his horse for cover, blood on his forehead. She'd hit him, but not enough to stop him. "Stay down," Silas called, moving smoothly. "This ain't done." Morrison grabbed a pistol, trying to aim, but his head wound made him clumsy. His shot missed by feet. Silas walked toward him, calm, like he'd faced death too many times to rush. "It's over, Morrison. Your men are down, your horse is dead, and you're bleeding too much to stay awake long." "Go to hell, McGraw," Morrison said, trying to aim again, but too weak. "Been there. Got back," Silas said, his rifle aimed at Morrison's chest. "Question is, do you want to live for a trial or die here like a sick dog?" Clara watched, amazed and scared. This was frontier justice, given by a man forced to be judge and sheriff. There was no kindness in Silas's face, but no extra cruelty either. Morrison tried one last shot. Silas's rifle fired once, and Morrison's terror ended in the dusty valley. The silence was loud. Clara climbed from the wagon, legs shaky. Still holding her cast-iron skillet, she'd grabbed it when the shooting started, her instincts reaching for something familiar. "Is it over?" she asked, looking at the scattered men and horses. "It's over," Silas said, checking the wounded men. Even after all they'd done, he couldn't let them suffer. "Help me tie up the ones still breathing. We'll drop them at the sheriff's in the next town." Clara nodded, still stunned. She'd shot a man, not killed him, but shot him. It felt like someone else's life. "You did good," Silas said, checking Morrison's body for weapons. "Held your ground, made your shots count. Emma's gonna be proud when she hears how brave her new mama was." The word mama warmed Clara. In 10 minutes, she'd proved she could fight for their family as hard as Silas. She'd faced killers and won. Most of all, she'd chosen love over safety and found the strength to protect what mattered. As they loaded the tied-up men into the wagon and kept going to Denver, Clara felt different. She wasn't the scared widow hiding in a cabin anymore. She was a woman who'd fought beside her man and proved she belonged in the family they were building. Emma was waiting, and Clara knew she was ready to be the mama a brave girl needed. 3 months later, Clara stood in their new cabins. doorway, watching Silas finish a cradle made from pine. The wood shone golden in the sunlight, every piece fitted perfectly, with tiny carved flowers like the ones in their meadow. "It's beautiful," she said, hand on her belly where their baby was growing. Silas looked up, his gray eyes happy. "Baby'll be here before snow comes. Wanted it perfect for him." "Or her," Clara Ara said, smiling. "Or her," Silas agreed, wrapping his arms gently around her. "This little one's gonna have everything we can give." Meeting Emma had been wonderful and hard. Mrs. Donovan didn't want them to see her at first, sticking to city rules and her own fears. But Emma settled it by climbing out a window and running 4 blocks to find them at their hotel. Clara Ara would never forget the moment Emma burst into their room, throwing herself into Silas's arms. 5 years apart, vanished, replaced by a dad and daughter bond nothing could break. "Papa," Emma cried into his chest, "I knew you'd come. I knew you wouldn't forget me." "Never could, little bird," Silas whispered, voice thick. Emma turned to Clara Ara, curious. "Are you the lady marrying Papa?" "I am," Clara Ara said, kneeling to look her in the eye. "If that's okay with you." Emma studied her, serious like she'd grown up too fast, then smiled, warm like Silas. "Good. Papa needs someone to take care of him. He's bad at remembering to eat regular." It wasn't always easy. Emma had learned city manners for 5 years and frontier. Life took time to get used to, but under those manners, Clara Ara found a girl who remembered how to track deer and find plants. More importantly, Emma had Silas's fierce loyalty. When she decided Clara Ara was family, she stuck to it with the same stubbornness as her dad. Mrs. Donovan finally gave in, but not happily. The law was tricky, with questions about Silas's rights. But his reputation helped. Killing Morrison's gang made him a hero, and people wanted him reunited with Emma. The wanted poster once. A threat now helped them. Emma framed it in their cabin, proud of her dad's legend. "My papa's famous," she told everyone. "He's the toughest man around, but makes the best pancakes ever." Watching Silas work on the cradle for their new baby, Clara Ara was amazed at how their lives had changed. The lonely widow and the feared fighter were now parents building a family. "Emma should be back soon," Clara Ara said, looking at the path to their neighbors. "Mrs. Henderson's teaching her to preserve peaches." "Good skill," Silas said, smoothing the cradle's edge. "Though I bet Emma's more into eating them." Clara Ara laughed, picturing Emma's sticky face from yesterday's lesson. "She's getting used to neighbors again." "Better than me," Silas said. "Still weird having folks close enough to drop by." "You'll get there. Emma needs friends her age, and our kids will need a community." Clara Ara said kids on purpose. Her pregnancy was confirmed soon after Emma joined them, making Silas's promise come true in ways they didn't expect. The doctor in Denver said she was healthy, with no problems expected. "Still can't believe it's real," Silas said, hand on her belly. "After thinking I'd never have another kid. After thinking I'd never have any," Clara Ara said. "Emma counts, you know. She's mine as much as this baby will be." "I know. She tells everyone you're her real mama now," Silas said, happy. "Yesterday she told Mrs. Henderson her other mom died long ago, but her real mama taught her to make biscuits that don't burn." Clara Ara's eyes teared up. Emma's love was a huge gift in this wild year. "She's an amazing kid." "She's our kid," Silas said firmly. "Just like this one will be. Family's not just blood, Clara. It's choosing to love someone, no matter what." As if she heard them, Emma ran up the path, carrying peaches and talking to their dog about what she'd learned. At 12, she was all legs and elbows, half kid, half young woman. "Mama! Papa!" she called, running to them. "Mrs. Henderson says I can help with the church social and learn to make apple pies." Clara Ara hugged her, amazed at how right it felt to be called Mama by this bright girl. "That's awesome, sweetheart." Emma set the peaches down and looked at the cradle. "Is it done? Can I try rocking it?" "Gently," Silas said, but his eyes were soft watching her. "This cradle's gotta last for all the babies we might have." "How many babies?" Emma asked, always practical. Clara Ara and Silas shared a look. "As many as God sends," Clara Ara said. Good, Emma said, satisfied. I want at least 3 more, and I want to help name them. As night fell over their valley, Clara Ara stood with her impossible family, the mountain man who learned to love again, the bright girl who connected past and future, and the baby growing inside, her, completing their circle. The cradle stood ready by their bed, a promise carved in pine and polished with hope. The wild mountains, once lonely, now meant freedom, a place for their kids to grow, a future only limited by their love and protection. Silas's promise, set in a fever, had built something more beautiful than they'd dreamed. Before spring, he'd made her a mama, and she'd made him a dad again. Together, they'd created a family that could face any storm. In the dark, Clara Ara whispered a prayer, thankful for second chances, wild promises, and love that grew strong in tough places. Their story was just starting.